Good afternoon to you, my Israel Brief family. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief because, hey, what else would it be? Brought to you by Lay of the Land, where we take a look at those top stories making headlines every Monday to Thursday. Now, before we get into the headlines, because it is day 214 since the start of the war, and today marks exactly 7 months since the horrific Hamas attack on Israelis on the 7th of October, where they raped, murdered, mutilated, burnt alive, and kidnapped Israeli civilians and other foreign nationals. Of course, Israel is currently engaged in a war with Hamas, and we're going to get into the updates in a minute. But before we do, I want to introduce a new segment to the Israel Brief. It's called Ask Me Anything. Well, of course, let's keep it family friendly, guys. I mean, I know we're amongst family, but let's keep it family friendly. I often get so many questions from you guys, so I thought every day I will take a question and try my best to answer it. So if you have any questions about Israel, Jewish history, the situation that you would like answered, please pop it in the comment section below with your name and where in the world you are from. So let's take a look at those top stories, and we begin with news that broke last night saying Hamas had accepted a ceasefire. Of course, all the global media jumped on this. This was extremely newsworthy. However, on closer inspection, it seems that Hamas had accepted a ceasefire and not the ceasefire that was proposed by Israel and agreed upon by all parties. Hamas apparently had agreed to a proposal which would see the release of 33 hostages and a truce of 40 days. Now, the Israeli officials said that they weren't aware of which conditions in the proposal Hamas were agreeing to. There has been some consternation whether or not American officials knew of this proposal and had not alerted Israeli officials. This is certainly being reported by Axios today. However, from Israel's perspective, this was not a proposal that they had agreed to. And it is believed that Hamas were not only trying to trick Israel, but trying to stall for time before a proposed Israeli incursion into Rafah. What is interesting is the Green Prince, or son of Hamas, who is known as Mossab Hassan Youssef. He said, Israel, do not fall for this trick. This is Hamas trying to trick you. And I urge you really to listen to interviews with the Green Prince. His name is Mossab Hassan Youssef. He really has more knowledge than anybody about what Hamas is like. Meanwhile, a short while ago, Israel announced that we have sent a mid-level delegation to Cairo in Egypt to assess a proposal and to see where we stand and what Hamas will accept. Earlier today, Israel gave the green light to enter Rafah. This is the Rafah area of the Gaza Strip. There has been a lot of international pushback about Israel's incursion into Rafah, which is the last remaining major Hamas stronghold. Now, any military strategist or any country would say, if we're going to fight a war, we need to win it. And the last remaining battalions and possibly hostages are being held in Rafah. In the last couple of days, the IDF has been urging civilians in the Gaza Strip to evacuate to a safe zone. The IDF has established the Al-Mawasi safe zone for civilians. We do not want civilian casualties. The IDF have dropped leaflets, phoned families, sent SMSs. You do not do this when you are committing a genocide. Just for those out there accusing Israel of a genocide. And I know we have a frequent commentator who has posted some unsavory comments, who yesterday said, why don't you report the truth? This is the truth. This is the truth. You are getting a side to the story that the mainstream media might not want you to hear, or your media outlets might not want you to hear, and that is Israel's side to the story. Okay, mini rant over. Israeli tanks entered eastern Rafah earlier today. They have captured the area along the border with Egypt and along the Philadelphia corridor, not cottage, and that was captured by Golani soldiers earlier during the war. Now, the United Nations have had a lot to say. They say that this is cutting off aid coming into Gaza and that there is only fuel for one day, which is very strange considering rockets and mortars are still being fired at Israeli positions and civilians, including rockets fired at Sderot last night in the southern part of Israel, and mortars fired towards the Kerem Shalom humanitarian crossing earlier today. This is the second time in as many days that Hamas has fired on the humanitarian crossing, forcing it to close. Meanwhile, the COGAT unit have been giving daily updates about how much aid, including fuel, is going into the strip. So if there is no fuel being circulated, you might find it in a Hamas tunnel or under the command of a Hamas terrorist. We will be bringing you updates on how the IDF proceed in Rafah, but the IDF have said this will be very, very, very precise. We don't want civilian casualties. We're going to try and mitigate them, as many of them as possible. Yesterday was Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, and I saw something yesterday that made me think that humanity has finally fallen. For many years, people have been saying that their issues with Israel is not about Jews, it is about anti-Zionism. Zionism, if you don't know, is the national liberation movement of the Jewish people. It is the Jewish people's right to self-determination in our ancient and ancestral homeland Israel, and the acceptance and the right of a Jewish state to exist. So if you believe all those things, congratulations, you're a Zionist. Back to yesterday. Every year, the March of the Living organization organizes a march from Auschwitz to Birkenau. It's about a mile long, and it commemorates the march that Jewish and other prisoners in the Auschwitz death camp were forced to make. Many of them perished on these death marches, and the march commemorates this and is an affirmation of life. Yesterday, there were over 55 Holocaust survivors from around the world who participated with them, as well as survivors of the 7th of October massacre and families of those being held hostage. Now, outside Auschwitz were anti-Israel protesters accusing Israel of committing genocide, shouting other epithets at the marches, and wearing yellow stars. To protest Holocaust survivors, massacre survivors, on a day that commemorates the worst atrocity in humankind, where the vast majority of victims were Jews, specifically targeted for extermination because they were Jews, is a new low and is more disgusting than I have words to actually describe. This has been roundly condemned, including by the March of the Living Foundation, who said a couple of dozen protesters chose this day to demonize and vilify Jews and Zionists. So anyone who's saying this issue about the Palestinians is not about Jews, it's about Zionism, your mask is off. It is exactly what we have been saying for years, and that is anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. We now go to Malmo in Sweden, where in a very, very unusual move, the head of the Shin Bet, or the Shabak, whatever you want to call it, Ronen Bar, has visited the city ahead of the Eurovision contest, which starts later this week. Now, Israel's contestant Eden Golan, and I highly recommend you listen to her song Hurricane. It really gives you all the feels and the tears as well. She has been receiving many death threats to her safety, to the point where it has been advised that she does not leave her hotel room. There have been extremely violent protests in Malmo and across Sweden over the last couple of months, some of them calling for death to Jews and Israelis, and we want to keep her and the Israeli delegation as safe as possible. Well, Bar is in Malmo. He is overseeing security arrangements for the Israeli delegation. And there have been some who say that Israel should not be included in Eurovision, comparing Israel to Russia. And just for those who might not know, Russia invaded Ukraine unprovoked. Israel is fighting a war with terrorist organization Hamas, following the worst atrocity against the Jewish people since the end of the Holocaust. There can be no equivocation. We wish Eden every success. Break a leg, Eden, and we hope you win. So if you are able to vote, go onto the Eurovision site and vote for Eden to bring home that trophy. And finally, we have been covering in quite a lot of detail the protests taking place across US campuses. This is now spreading to university campuses around the world, including Holland and the Netherlands and Belgium. Those were shut down by police. Some violent scenes earlier today across the United Kingdom, in Paris, where police have shut them down. But 13 federal judges have written to Columbia University President Minouche Shafik saying that they will not be hiring Columbia graduates who have been a part of these protests, citing anti-Semitism. Shafik has taken a lot of criticism, as well as other universities, for capitulating to protesters and for not doing enough to protect Jewish students and faculty. Some of the rhetoric coming from these protests is absolutely diabolical. This is not free speech. This has crossed over into hate speech. I have written an article about it. You can read it on our website at www.layoftheland.online. It is also on our Facebook page at Lytle's site. You guys know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. And if you like this content, please hit that red subscribe button below on our YouTube channel at The Israel Brief, and we're on X at Lay of the Land 5. I'm Rolene Marks. Guys, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. God bless you. I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.